Broxn Zoo headquarters of the Wildlife Conservation Society, we are dedicated to saving wildlife and wild places around the world. Today I'm going to be taking you on a wildlife tour of Asia, which will include India, China, Cambodia, Nepal, Pakistan, and Indonesia, all without ever leaving the Bronx. We begin our trip by... You have to stay in your seat. We begin our trip by crossing over the Bronx River. And the Bronx River is 23 miles long. It's the only freshwater river within the city of New York, and it provides a habitat for ducks, turtles, fish, and migrating birds. Now, Asia is the continent with the largest number of deer species, and it is well known for its deer diversity. And we have just traveled 7,000 miles and arrived at our first meadow, only to find it, it's empty. Now, the three animals in this first exhibit, axis deer, Barrasinger deer, and black buck antelope, have all migrated to the left over the hill. We'll catch up to them in about 8 to 10 minutes, but I will describe them now. The axis deer has been exhibited at the Broxn Zoo since 1899, and it's one of the few deer species that are born with spots and keep their spots for their entire lives. Most other deer lose their spots as they mature, and they are native to India and Sri Lanka. The Barrasinger deer, native to India, and in the Hindi language, the word Barrasinger means 12 tined, because males will have 12 to 14 points in their antlers. They're also known as swamp deer. And the black buck antelope, native to India, Pakistan, and parts of Nepal, are the smallest antelope in Asia, standing only 2.5 to 3 feet tall. A mature male will have a dark chocolate brown coat with long spiraled horns, while immature males and females are tan and white in color. Now we'll see all three of these animals in about 8 to 10 minutes when we get to the other side of the exhibit.
Hi, my name is Michelle. I'm part of the Wild Asian Keeper team. We call this area Kanha Meadow, where we care for about 40 Barrasinger deer, 15 axis deer, 10 black buck, and a pair of muntjac. We start our day by checking on all the animals, making sure they are healthy, behaving normally, and safe. Sometimes fawns and calves are born overnight. Newborns are given a neonatal exam, which includes weighing, vaccination, and tagging for identification purposes. While the animals are in the meadow, we prepare their nighttime holding areas so that they have a safe and clean place to spend the night.
Like the dinosaur and the dodo bird, we all know that a species that is extinct is lost to us forever. The next animals we're about to see were on the brink of extinction. In fact, the Mongolian wild horse was extinct in nature and could only be found in captivity. Now, captive breeding of the Mongolian wild horse began with a group of 28 horses in 1901, and the Broxn Zoo received its first horses in 1902, and we have maintained our herd ever since. As a matter of fact, over the years we've added 50 horses here, all directly descended from the originals. And the Mongolian wild horse is the only true species of wild horse that is alive today, and its appearance differs from the domestic horse, has a stockier build, shorter legs, and an erect mane, which resembles a mohawk haircut. And that mane is also missing a forelock, the piece of hair which normally falls in front of a domestic horse's forehead. Now, there has been successful reintroduction into the wild in parts of Mongolia and China from herds of horses that were bred and raised in North American and Asian zoos. And the Mongolian wild horse has a long and rich history, which is well entwined with our own human history. Now, over in Europe, in the countries of France and Spain, there are some caves there which at one time were occupied by prehistoric man. Now, the caves are decorated with paintings and drawings of animals, and one of the animals depicted is the Mongolian wild horse. The significance of all this is that the caves are between 25,000 and 35,000 years old, which means that the Mongolian wild horse and humans have been interacting for many, many centuries. And as we go through the exhibits this afternoon, you're going to notice that some trees are wrapped in wire, and that wire is there to help protect the trees from the animals. Some animals like to eat parts of the trees, others like to rub their horns or antlers on the bark of a tree. If the trees get damaged, they can die, and since they provide shade, shelter, and a food source, we try to protect as many trees as possible. This next exhibit, we're looking for two different animals, and the first one is right here in front of us as we come in. And that is the brown-randered deer. And
hey deer.
The brown-randered deer gets its name from the look of the male's antlers, which form a brow shape in front of the deer's face. These deer are considered to be vulnerable in their native Cambodia since they're losing habitat to farming and in many areas they have to resort to feeding on crops. Now the crops aren't as nutritious as their natural food would be, so they're actually eating and starving at the same time. And if you're looking for antlers, you're not going to find any because they're all female on exhibit this afternoon. Now if you focus your attention over to the upper right-hand corner, the general vicinity, you're going to run into the gaur, the world's largest wild cattle. Now they could weigh as much as 2,000 pounds and stand 6 feet tall at the shoulder. They can grow to a length of 10 feet. Now if the horns go straight up and down, it's a male. If the horns curve inward at the tips, it's a female. And we've had about 11 calves born here over the last few years. And with their large size and impressive horns, the gaur have very few enemies in the wild. They can even defend themselves against the tiger, but they are threatened by the loss of habitat and by diseases they can catch from domestic cattle. Now it's easy to forget that the Broxn Zoo is located in the heart of an urban environment, but the noise that you hear behind you is the traffic on the Broxn River Parkway, and the large fence directly in front of us is there to help reduce noise from the city traffic. Now on the other side of this fence we have a tiger, and that means that everyone on this train has to remain in their seats. There's no standing for any reason whatsoever, and even if you're taking a picture, if you do stand up, I have to stop the train, which interrupts the tour. So please be cooperative and stay seated. Now tigers are typically solitary animals in the wild. They prefer to live alone. And that is the reason why we only exhibit one tiger here at a time. And tiger stripes provide excellent camouflage. No two tigers will have the same stripe pattern. And scientists can use that information in the wild to identify it. On the left-hand side coming down the hill, scientists can use that information in the wild to identify individual tigers, and this way they can determine how many tigers are living in a particular area. Now in the wild, tigers prefer to eat wild pig and medium-sized deer, and a tiger will gorge itself on a fresh kill, eating up to 40 pounds of meat in one sitting, which is the equivalent of about 160 average human being. I had that many at a 4th of July barbecue once, and I was really minded by the Labor Day. And after a meal like that, a tiger and myself don't need to get to several days. His name is Anakin. He's an 8-year-old Siberian tiger, also known as an Amur tiger. And Siberia is the largest subspecies of tiger in the world. A mature male can weigh anywhere from 500 to 600 pounds. The tigers of all types are highly endangered. There's only about 3,200 tigers left in the wild. Poaching, loss of habitat, and lack of prey are the tiger's worst enemies. The Wildlife Conservation Society is one of the world's leading organizations, helping to save and protect tigers wherever tigers can be found. Take a look at the upper left-hand corner on top of the hill here. You'll see the gaur a little closer than before. And in a moment, we're going to be entering the back end of the first exhibit where we didn't see any of the animals. Now, if you take a look into the center of the exhibit, about down halfway down, you're going to see the barra-singa deer all sitting in a group in the center there. On the left-hand side, we have some of these spotted axis deer, and over to the center left, we have some of the black buck antelope way off in the distance. Now, the roads that you see here are used by the zookeepers to access the 40 acres of wild Asia, but in the wild, roads can represent danger for the animals since they allow hunters and poachers deeper into the animal's habitat. And the next animal we're going to see is the babirusa, which is a wild pig native to the Indonesian island of Sulawesi. And in the Indonesian language, the word babirusa means pig deer because the males of the species have tusks on their snouts that curve backward towards the horizon that resemble antlers. Today we have two males, Hickory and Fez. Now the males will use their tusks to defend themselves as well as to attract females, and they prefer to live alone. He's in the upper right-hand corner, right behind the rocks. Now females prefer to live in family groups in the wild, the males prefer to live alone. This is Fez, lower right-hand corner. Now elephants are the world's largest land mammals. But unfortunately, they're also becoming one of the rarest. And in the wild, Asian elephants live up to 60 years. Our Asian elephant Happy is in her late 40s. Now, Asian elephants can weigh as much as 10,000 pounds, and therefore they need to eat lots of vegetation. And at the Broxn Zoo, Happy receives a healthy diet of fruits and vegetables. Plus, she can eat as much as 200 pounds of hay and drink up to 60 gallons of water in one day. And the elephant's trunk is a remarkable tool. It has over 40,000 muscles put in the entire human body, and a finger-like appendage at the end of it that the elephant will use like a hand for picking up small items off the ground, such as dirt from the ground and throw on its back to keep insects off, or grazing. An elephant can also wrap its trunk around a tree and pull it down with tremendous force. Now, Happy is pampered here at the Broxn Zoo. Not only does she have her own private pool, back scratcher, and toys, she also gets pedicures and baths. Now, the baths are self-explanatory. The pedicures help to keep the elephant's feet healthy. Now, we're going to say goodbye to Happy. We're going to say hello to Callie, our Indian rhino. Now, there's only about 2,000 Indian rhinos left in the wild between India and Nepal. And at the Broxn Zoo, we currently care for 5 of the endangered species. And we've been quite successful at breeding rhinos in captivity here at the zoo. Over the last several years, we've had 11 births here. And our last rhino was born back in 2013. Now, an interesting fact about the Indian rhino that I'm sure the moms and the train will appreciate: the gestation period for an Indian rhino is 16 months. Now, could you imagine being pregnant for almost a year and a half and then giving birth to a baby that could weigh as much as 150 pounds? The baby will stay with its mother for about 2 to 3 years, although weaning only takes 12 to 16 months. Now, contrary to popular belief, rhinos are not armor-plated, and they don't have a very thick skin. As a matter of fact, they have a thin layer of skin that has many folds, and that skin is sensitive to sunlight and insect bites. And that is why you'll often find rhinos wallowing in mud or covered in mud, because the mud helps to protect and soothe their skin. Now, we're going to be passing a mud wallow that's been here since 1977, the year that Wild Asia first opened. And over the years, rhinos like Callie have shaped this wallow to their liking. And as you can see, rhinos are large animals. They can weigh as much as 4,000 pounds. But they can still run at speeds of up to 30 miles an hour. But that's not fast enough to outrun poachers who are hunting and killing the rhino for its horn. Now, the horn of the rhinoceros is not like the horn that you would find on antelope or cattle. It's not permanently attached to the skull of the animal, and it's made out of compressed keratin fiber, the same material that you would find in fingernails and hair. And the horn is coveted in many Asian cultures. Some cultures believe the horn has medicinal powers, others believe the horn has magical powers, and in some cultures they'll use the horn for making dagger handles. In this next exhibit, we're going to see more examples of deer species and antelope that are found in Asia. We have several different species of deer. We have the hog deer, which is the species of deer that they call hog deer simply because it's short and stout like a hog, and they prefer to creep and crawl rather than run and jump like other deer. Zambar deer. Largest deer in southern Asia. They can weigh as much as 650 pounds, stand 5 feet tall at the shoulder. The male's antler can reach a length of 3 feet once they're fully grown. And as you may know, deer will shed their antlers once a year and then regrow them. Formosa sika deer, native to the island of Taiwan, which is formerly known as Formosa. They are a spotted deer, and their spots are more visible in the summer, less visible in the winter when their coats get thicker. The Nilgai antelope. Up until today, we had 3 of them in the exhibit. Now we have 8. Are the largest and fastest antelope in Asia, running at speeds of up to 40 miles an hour. The males have short horns, the females do not, but they all have distinctive black and white stripes, just above their hooves to make them look like they're wearing socks. And in the Hindi language, the word nilgai means blue bull, because males get a bluish-gray tinge to their coats once they mature. We're going to be crossing over a stream which happens to be the runoff water from the rhino's mud wallow. It's kind of muddy, but if you follow it all the way up to the top, in the upper left you're going to have some Zambar deer going across towards the right and the back there. In the sunlight along the fence back there we have a hog deers grazing on the hillside here to your right. Those are nilgai antelope. And way in the upper right-hand corner, sitting among the rocks back there and fallen trees, we have our Formosa Sika deer. Now China's tufted deer on the left-hand side here, right in the upper left-hand corner, on the left, can be quite elusive since they only weigh about 40 pounds fully grown, and their dark brown coat helps them blend in perfectly with the background of the exhibit. They don't like the heat of summer, they prefer the cooler weather in spring and fall, so you'll see more of them now than you would in July. In the upper right-hand corner, another one. Now they get their name, tufted deer, from a tuft of hair that sits on top of their foreheads. The males of the species have elongated canine teeth that protrude from their upper lip like a tusk, and that gives them their nickname, the vampire deer. Now the Broxn Zoo is fortunate to be one of the only zoos in the world outside of China to exhibit China's tufted deer. And you may think that deer are quiet animals, but in fact they are not. They make a variety of sounds. They can bark like a dog, they can whistle. If they feel stressed or in danger, they can even growl. Now as we cross back over the Broxn River, we'll be at the highest point of our tour, 35 feet above the water, and the Wildlife Conservation Society knows how important it is to protect the Broxn River corridor and greenway. We want to make sure that the river remains a healthy and viable environment for both the animals and Broxn residents to enjoy. The rugged rocky terrain in our next exhibit here is very well suited for our next two animals, both related to the wild goat. We have the markhor and the Himalayan tahr. Now the Himalayan tahr, the markhor, the largest subspecies of goat in the world. They're native to the mountains of Central Asia and they're Pakistan's national animal. In the Persian language, the word markhor means snake horn because legend has it the males ate a snake, and that's why they have those long spiraled horns that can reach a length of 5 feet popping out of the top of their heads. The markhor also had about 5 babies this spring, so be on the lookout for them. Himalayan tahr are a little bit darker in color, and they have a triangular shaped horn that is bent backwards and inwards. Now both the markhor and the Himalayan tahr are very well adapted for the rugged rocky terrain here in the Broxn. They have a rubbery core on their hooves, which help them to cling to the rocks, much like the sole of a boot. And they can also jump vertically into the air, between 4 to 6 feet from a standstill position, and that helps them go from one ledge to another when they're climbing the mountains. Just like a Himalayan tahr back here, just at the very top of the ridge. All you can see is its back right now. And over to the right, past this large V-shaped tree. In the leafy tree directly behind it, we have our red panda. Now, people have been fascinated by the beautiful color of the red panda for many years. And in Nepal, the red panda is called Han Ho, which roughly translated means firefox. Can everybody in their seats? Now, the red panda was known to the Western world many years before the more popular giant black and white panda. And although the two species are not closely related, they do share the same specialized diet of bamboo, and the word panda means bamboo eater. Now, red pandas are more closely related to skunks, raccoons, and weasels. Now, the Broxn Zoo was founded back in 1895, and our former president, Theodore Roosevelt, was on the committee that helped charter the Broxn Zoo. The zoo opened up its gates in 1899, and it occupies 265 acres of land here in the center of the Broxn. And believe it or not, most of this property was the estate of one single family before it became the Broxn Zoo. And conservation was always at the forefront here at the Broxn Zoo, right from the very beginning. In 1899, when the zoo first opened up, the American buffalo was on the verge of extinction from being overhunted. The Broxn Zoo had several buffalo on exhibit here when it first opened. They were bred in captivity for several years, and when we had sufficient numbers, they were shipped out to the Great Plains, to help to reestablish some herds out there. So the Broxn Zoo played a pivotal role in helping to save the American buffalo from extinction. And I believe that at one time or another, some of the people on this train have had a Broxn buffalo in their pocket. I'm talking about the Indian head nickel in circulation from 1913 to 1938. Had the American Indian on the front of the coin, the American buffalo on the back of the coin. The buffalo that was used as the model for that coin resided here at the Broxn Zoo. Now, as we proceed back to the platform, remain seated until this train comes to a complete stop and the doors open. People in the front row will have a step up while exiting, while the people in the back row will have a step down. And on behalf of the Wildlife Conservation Society and myself, Lou, thank you for coming to the Wild Asian Monorail today. Hope you enjoyed the tour, and please enjoy the rest of your afternoon here at the lovely Broxn Zoo.